Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuan were nearing 50. At this age, they should have been enjoying their retirement, playing with their grandchildren. But they were still troubled because their youngest son hadn't settled down yet. He spent all his days roaming around, chasing girls. Mrs. Thuan, who followed in her parents' footsteps with the family trade, was utterly exasperated. The more she thought about her son, the more frustrated she became. There was so much work to do around the house, and whenever they needed him, he was nowhere to be found. Mrs. Thuan clicked her tongue and told her husband, "Look at that precious son of ours. I'm at my wit's end. He just wastes his time chasing girls, but not a single one looks his way. He claims to be close friends with Hoan, Mr. Han's son, but what has he ever learned from him?" Mr. Phuc, who was drying silk in the courtyard, looked up and clicked his tongue. "Don't even mention that thick-skinned good-for-nothing again. Just talking about him drives me mad. Let him come home. As soon as he shows his face, I'll give him a good thrashing. He's a truly cursed child." The person Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuan were talking about was Tung. The young people in the village called him Tung Cheng because his mouth was like a loud gong. He'd make a racket wherever he went. In contrast to Tung, there was Hoan. Although the two were close friends, Hoan was completely different. Yet they were inseparable, like shadows, ever since they were children skinny-dipping in the rain. So they whispered every secret, big or small, to each other. Hoan was also the youngest son of Mr. Han, the village master. His family also had a traditional silk weaving business. In this village, almost every household raised silkworms and wove silk. However, to weave a soft, smooth, comfortable, and beautifully colored silk fabric, not every family could achieve it. In this village of over 4,000 residents, the number of families renowned for their silk was countable on one's fingers. Among them, Mr. Han's family stood out. Their silk had been famous throughout the capital for generations. The reason Tien Chau Silk Village thrived was its adherence to a secret. Young men and women in the village, upon reaching marrying age, were only allowed to wed within the village. They didn't want their children marrying outsiders for fear the silk trade secrets would be taken elsewhere. Because of this, the silk trade here didn't die out, but rather flourished. Most silk-making families had their own ancestral secrets, which they guarded fiercely. Even with the closest relatives, they would never reveal them, not even to their own siblings. Thus, in families where the parents were still alive, they held the trade secrets. Only when a parent was nearing death would they pass the trade to their eldest child. That was how it used to be, but now things were different. Because previous generations always assumed the eldest son would inherit the trade, some families found that their eldest son didn't live up to expectations. Perhaps this also made people selfish and disrespectful towards their parents, neglecting the trade, and ultimately leading to ruin. Consequently, some silk-making families learned from this experience and decided it wasn't necessary to pass the trade to the eldest son. Instead, the most talented and dedicated among their children would inherit it. This decision subtly fueled a silent competition among the children. Everyone wanted to please their parents to secure the family trade. Whoever was fortunate enough to inherit it would secure the family's prosperity and wealth in the future. Choosing a daughter-in-law was also extremely important. For renowned silk families, this was nothing short of a rigorous selection process. Mr. Han's family had 5 children, 2 sons and 3 daughters. His 3 daughters were already married, all within the village. His eldest son had also settled down, but it seemed his and his wife's skills weren't improving much. So, Mr. and Mrs. Han intended to pass the trade to Hoan. But the most crucial thing now was to find him a wife. In the village, there was Tham, the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Chat, who was just 19 this year. She was known for her beauty, grace, and skill. Many young men vied for her attention, but her heart belonged to Hoan. They were a perfect match. Hoan was tall, handsome, agile, and resourceful. What could be more suitable for Tham? Thus, Hoan effortlessly surpassed the other young men in the village with his character. Their love blossomed peacefully, and they merely awaited an auspicious day to become husband and wife. However, something unexpected happened that neither of them knew about. Tung had fallen deeply in love with Tham, but before he could confess, Tham had already fallen for Hoan. Instead of being happy for his friend, Tung Cheng secretly seethed with anger and jealousy over their love. On the surface, he smiled, pretending to be carefree and friendly with Hoan as usual. But deep down, he thought differently. Tung mumbled to himself, "What makes him better than me? Why is he always so lucky? Why does Tham love him and not me? I won't just stand by and watch. The news of Hoan and Tham's love eventually reached Mr. and Mrs. Han. Hoan hadn't told his parents yet, intending to wait until the right moment to share the news with the whole family. That evening, as usual, when Hoan asked permission to go out, Mr. Han turned to his wife and said, "Look at our youngest son, he has such good taste. That girl Tham is quite a catch. Indeed, I didn't misjudge her." Mrs. Han nodded in agreement. "Then we should prepare a betrothal offering for Mr. and Mrs. Chat's family and propose. Let's ask Tham to be our daughter-in-law. I've seen them getting to know each other for a while now. They say when you marry, marry quickly. Don't wait too long or many will gossip." Mr. Han agreed with his wife and added, "It's not just gossipers I fear, but if we wait too long, someone might snatch her away. I'll ask him about it when he gets back later." As Mr. and Mrs. Han had discussed that evening, when Hoan returned home and his parents asked about his personal life, he guessed they already knew. He recounted his entire relationship to Mr. Han. Mr. Han then told Hoan of his intention to marry him off so he could settle down. Hoan nodded in agreement, touched by his parents' love and concern for him. A week later, the news that Mr. Han's family was asking for Tham's hand for their youngest son, Hoan, reached Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuan. Looking at their son and thinking of their own, Mr. Phuc turned to Tung, annoyed. "You're so foolish, my son. You hang out with Hoan but learn nothing from him. Look at him. He's both skilled and now he's marrying the most beautiful girl in the village. What's that but a tiger growing wings? You, on the other hand, are good for nothing but empty talk." "You're truly all talk and no substance," Mrs. Thuan chimed in. "I heard his family intends to pass the trade to Hoan. His older brother completely switched to trading and doesn't specialize in production. Other people's children bring honor to their parents, but you're just a burden. We'll die because of you." Tung was bitter. Because of that damned Hoan, his parents kept criticizing him. Now, with the news that Hoan was getting Tham, it felt like the last straw. His parents didn't know how much he resented it. He couldn't swallow this humiliation. As they say, a gentleman's revenge is best served cold, even after 10 years. He didn't believe Hoan could be better than him forever. Tung thought to himself, "Don't get too carried away with your happiness. 9 months, 10 days, it could all crumble." He then turned to his parents, pretending to be earnest. "Oh, mother, father, why are you so bitter? I will prove to you that Hoan isn't as great as you think. I will take everything back from him. Let him gloat now. That dog can't surpass your son." Mrs. Thuan gaped, hearing such words from her son. She tried to guess the hidden meaning behind her wayward son's words. Tung spoke again. "I resent him so much. He's received too many blessings from heaven. He even snatched the woman I love. I cannot let this revenge go unanswered. Just wait." "What are you planning to do to him, son? I beg you, don't do anything foolish and end up in jail. How can you compare yourself to him?" His parents were worried, but Tung reassured them. "When I said revenge, I meant something else. Only by outsmarting him through subtle means can I succeed. I'm determined to build my own fortune, starting today. He'll have to grovel at my feet, and only then will I be satisfied." Mr. Phuc, who had been listening silently, slapped his thigh and exclaimed, "Good, very good. Today, for the first time, you've spoken like a man. A man must be like this, never losing to an opponent. Our family has always lagged behind theirs in the dyeing process, even if our weaving is top-notch. With such ambition, your father is pleased. Your mother and I will support you." Mrs. Thuan, hearing her husband, added, "Yes, son, it's good that you're thinking like this. Try to work hard, son. Then I'll find a suitable girl among our business partners for you to marry." Tung still didn't feel at ease, as his long-held intention was for his parents to pass the trade to him. But no matter how much he pleaded, his parents shook their heads. After all, Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuan hadn't promised to pass the trade to anyone, even though he had 2 older brothers. His eldest brother was very quick and cunning, but no matter what he and his wife did to curry favor, his parents still didn't agree. As for his second brother, there was no hope for him because his sister-in-law was too eccentric, so his parents said a clever person like her couldn't be trusted with the trade. So, it was just him and his eldest brother. In the past, because he was always a playboy and his parents spoiled him as the youngest, he never worried about working. And his eldest brother's wife thought that surely she would inherit the dyeing technique. But it seemed the tide had turned. From that day on, Tung seemed to transform into a different person. He no longer indulged in frivolous pursuits with his idle friends, but diligently applied himself to work. He studied hard and devoted himself wholeheartedly. Mr. and Mrs. Thuan were delighted, thinking their son had changed his ways. In truth, Tung Chang was naturally intelligent and had many tricks up his sleeve. He only needed to hear his parents explain things once or twice to grasp the technique. If he had always been so focused and possessed a good heart, there would have been nothing to criticize. 3 months later, Hoan and Tham's wedding was held amidst everyone's blessings. Tham was truly the happiest bride, for Hoan was an ideal man many girls dreamed of. Sitting beside her friends, Tham's face glowed with an indescribable happiness. On the other side, Hoan also sat with his male friends, a constant smile on his lips. No one noticed the man whose guts were churning with envy, yet his mouth still wore a cheerful smile, as if sharing in the couple's joy. That man was Tung Chang. Hoan and Tham were truly a match made in heaven. Tham was not only beautiful but also virtuous. Despite being the youngest daughter-in-law in the Han family, Tham managed household affairs with great skill and was an excellent silk weaver. The silk she wove was soft and smooth, without a single flaw, not even a minor detail. Mrs. Han was very pleased, seeing her slim and capable daughter-in-law, knowing her son indeed had good taste. Another thing that delighted Mrs. Han about her daughter-in-law was Tham's extreme humility and understanding. She never competed or exploited her in-law's affection for her own gain. Although Tham and Hoan had an advantage living with Mr. and Mrs. Han, Mr. Han and Mrs. Han still wanted to observe their children for a while longer before deciding who would inherit the trade. Meanwhile, Tung and Phuong, Hoan's eldest brother and his wife, were managing a large fabric shop, one of the biggest in Tien Chau Silk Village. Business was thriving, with customers constantly coming and going, as their shop was renowned for producing the smoothest and most beautiful silk in the region. Therefore, whether their parents passed the trade to them or to their younger brother was no longer a major concern. But Thai, Tung's wife, was different. She harbored great ambitions. This one shop was not enough for her. If she could get her hands on Mrs. Han's secret dyeing technique, it would be truly perfect. With it, she and her husband would dominate the silk village. Seeing her husband engrossed in business and not pushing for the inheritance of the trade from his parents, Thai grew anxious. Seeing her brother-in-law marry such a skilled and resourceful wife, Thai became even more worried. One afternoon, when there were few customers, she told her husband, "You need to do something. If you just sit back like this, how will we ever get ahead? Everyone has to try and win Mother's favor a little. I heard Mother intends to pass on the trade soon. If we can get that unique dyeing secret, it'll be like a dragon meeting a lucky windwheel soar." She expected her husband to be spurred into action by her words to worry about this important matter. But Tung nonchalantly said something that felt like a splash of cold water. "I overheard that Mother might be thinking of passing the trade to Hoan and his wife. Well, their family, so it won't be a loss wherever it goes. Besides, we already have this big fabric shop. It's fine for him to take on that responsibility. Tham is also skillful, so there's nothing to worry about." "Oh, you're impossible?" Thai retorted. "This is our family business, and you're talking like it's a neighbor's affair. I don't agree with that at all. Who should curry favor with Mother so she'll agree to pass the trade to us? If the eldest son doesn't inherit, and the youngest does, what kind of order is that?" Tung knew his wife was always ambitious and seemed jealous that Tham, as a new daughter-in-law, had already won so much affection from his in-laws. He also knew that with his wife's temperament, his mother would never pass the trade to them. Tham, on the other hand, was not competitive and always had a kind heart, fitting his mother's criteria, not having too many ambitions like Thai. However, fearing his wife's sadness, he didn't dare say it out loud. Speaking of Tung, after a period of diligent work, he began to change his parents' perception of him. Tung Chang also set his sights on Phuong, a girl from the village gate. The two were compatible because Tung was cunning and deceitful, while Phuong was full of schemes. Though young, she was far more astute than many girls her age. It seemed fate had cleverly brought them together. The couple quickly connected. Each immediately recognized the other as the missing half. Mr. and Mrs. Phuc, after several interactions with Phuong, were not entirely pleased. They observed her appearance and her eyes, which didn't seem genuine. Her eyes always darted, secretly watching others, and her teeth protruded slightly. According to the elders, just as elephants are proud of their tusks, women are proud of their teeth, and a woman with protruding teeth is deemed untrustworthy and difficult to deal with. But their son was adamant about marrying her. He declared that if his parents didn't agree, he wouldn't marry anyone else. Finally, heaven did not yield to earth. but Earth had to yield to heaven. Mr. and Mrs. Thuan reluctantly agreed to let Phuong marry their wayward youngest son. If the story had ended there would be nothing more to say. But it was when Phuong stepped into the house as a daughter-in-law that everything truly began. After living with her in-laws for a while, Phuong revealed her cunning nature. Outwardly, she constantly flattered and cared for her in-laws, but inwardly she plotted other shocking schemes. It wasn't long before Mrs. Thuan discerned her daughter-in-law's true character. She could only shake her head with disappointment, thinking that far from bringing good fortune, this daughter-in-law might bring disaster. One afternoon, when Tung and Phuong were not home, Mrs. Thuan told Mr. Phuc, "This girl has a bad heart, Tung. I've caught her hiding money several times, and she's deceitful and untrustworthy. A person like that will only bring harm to her husband and children. I've decided. This time, we'll call all the children for a family meeting, and then we'll announce that we're passing the trade to the eldest son." Mr. Phuc nodded in agreement with his wife's idea. The couple had no idea that Phuong had returned some time ago. With her suspicious nature, she hadn't entered the house immediately. Hearing her in-laws discussing something inside, Phuong lingered, discreetly observing. Indeed, it was as she suspected. After hearing the entire conversation and learning of her in-laws' intentions, Phuong's face turned ashen. She bit her lip and quickly retreated to the road, muttering, "You've pushed me to the brink. It seems I have no choice but to act." Her eyes, sharp as knives, glared towards the house. In Phuong's mind, a perfectly devious plan began to form. That night, something truly terrible happened at the house. Mrs. Thuan often woke up at night to use the restroom, and believing herself to be healthy, she usually went outside instead of using a chamber pot indoors. In those days, there were no self-flushing toilets. But in recent decades, every household had built an outhouse in the corner of their garden. Mr. and Mrs. Phuc's house also had such a restroom. Peacefully sleeping, Mrs. Thuan suddenly felt an urgent need to urinate, her bladder aching. It was a freezing winter night, and though she wished to hold it until morning, the more she tried, the more her stomach cramped unbearable. She reluctantly got up. Perhaps it was too dark, so she didn't notice the changes made earlier. As she walked, half stumbling, Mrs. Thuan suddenly tripped over a large stone and fell sprawling to the ground. Her head, unfortunately, hit the stone in front of her. Blood flowed profusely, and in a panic she cried out, "I'm dying, Mr. Phuc." She managed only a few words before the pain overwhelmed her, and she passed out. No one knew how long she lay there until Mr. Phuc reached out beside him and found his wife gone. Thinking she had gone to relieve herself as usual, he lay still, waiting. But after a long while, Mrs. Thuan didn't return. Feeling uneasy, he quickly got up and looked outside. The winter night was as dark as pitch. He couldn't see anything. He quickly lit his oil lamp and slowly walked out. After a few steps, he gasped in horror when he saw Mrs. Thuan lying sprawled in front of him. Stunned, he rushed to his wife's side. As the light from the oil lamp illuminated her, he clearly saw blood gushing from his wife's head, covering her face. In a panic, he cried out, "Tung, wake up! Wake up and see what happened to your mother." Mr. Phuc's frantic cry immediately woke Tung. Phuong quickly helped her husband rush out. The two of them lifted Mrs. Thuan. Tung put his hand to his mother's nose. She was still breathing. They immediately rushed her to the emergency room that very night. Phuong even put on a dramatic show of being distraught. "Oh dear, mother must have been going to the toilet at night and accidentally tripped over a stone, causing her to fall. It's so sad. I've told her so many times to keep a chamber pot inside, but she never listened." Because their children lived close to the weaving workshop, everyone arrived shortly after. Mrs. Thuan was taken to the hospital and survived the critical period. However, her condition did not seem very promising. Perhaps the medical facilities of that era were not as modern as they are today. So, after a period of treatment, Mrs. Thuan was discharged. However, she could no longer walk as before. One leg was noticeably weak, as if she had been paralyzed on her left side. For a healthy woman to now have to rely on a cane and crutches to move was truly a torment for her. But the most important thing was her role in passing on the trade. The silk dyeing business required careful planning, so this had to be postponed indefinitely. Back home, Phuong took on the primary responsibility of bathing and caring for her mother-in-law during the initial period. Seeing her daughter-in-law's enthusiasm and willingness to help, Mrs. Thuan blamed herself for being too harsh on her earlier. Feeling reluctant to inconvenience her daughter-in-law, she told her husband, "I am a woman, so my sons can't attend to me. Why don't you ask our 2 daughters to come over and care for me for a few days? I feel bad leaving Phuong to manage everything alone. After all, she is our daughter-in-law." Before Mr. Phuc could say anything, Phuong interjected, "Mother, you don't need to worry. Caring for our parents is our responsibility. My husband and I are more fortunate than my older siblings because we live with you. Now that this has happened, it's our turn to repay you. Let me take care of you. You don't need to ask my sisters to come. They have their own families and many things to do. It would be too troublesome. Just let me handle it." Mr. Phuc was very pleased to hear his daughter-in-law speak like this. He turned to his wife and said, "If she is so filial, then we should be happy, my dear. We only worry about burdening her, and she also has work at the weaving workshop." Mrs. Thuan's eyes welled up with emotion, realizing all her previous thoughts about Phuong had been wrong. It turned out that one could not judge a person's inner self by their outward appearance. Only when disaster struck could one know who was truly good. Phuong immediately reassured her in-laws. "Don't worry, our weaving workshop is still managed by my husband, me, and my older siblings. Caring for Mother isn't difficult at all. I can still take care of Mother while running back and forth to the workshop." And so, from that day on, Phuong meticulously cared for her mother-in-law from meals to sleep. She even personally bought tonics and brewed them for Mrs. Thuan to drink. Both Mr. and Mrs. Phuc praised their filial daughter-in-law. Tung was also touched by his wife's actions. Occasionally, he would compare Phuong to Tham, his best friend's wife. But in the end, Phuong was a clever woman, and her affectionate gestures brought some comfort to Tung Cheng himself. However, the truth hidden beneath the surface was completely different. No one knew what Phuong was truly thinking. Only Phuong herself felt extreme resentment inside. She had to swallow her pride and maintain a facade of a virtuous daughter-in-law during this time. Phuong even went to great lengths in caring for Mrs. Thuan. In reality, her main objective was the ancestral secret that Mrs. Thuan had not yet passed on to anyone. Seizing this opportunity, she was determined to change everything, and eventually her efforts bore fruit. One day, while Phuong was massaging her mother-in-law's feet, Mrs. Thuan took her hand and said, "Tomorrow, I will call all the children home. Then your father and I will officially announce that we are passing the trade to you and your husband. Thank you for taking such devoted care of me all this time." "Mother, please don't think like that. This is our duty and responsibility. Just rest and get well. The matter of the trade can wait, Mother." "No," Mrs. Thuan replied. "Now is the time when I am still healthy and lucid. If we wait too long, who knows what old age will bring." It was through Phuong's constant attendance on her mother-in-law during this period that Mrs. Thuan was deceived. Not only that, but there was a truth that Mrs. Thuan would never know the reason for, even until her death. The very next day, Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuan gathered all their children for a family meeting. When they announced their decision to pass the trade to Tung and Phuong, all of Tung's older siblings vehemently objected. Tung's 2 sisters-in-law even pointed directly at Phuong, accusing her of being a manipulative hypocrite. They claimed she had only pretended to be filial and cared for their mother because she and Tung lived with their parents, making it awkward to pass the trade to anyone else. But the most important thing was that Phuong had achieved her goal by using this strategy to deceive everyone. Normally, when exposed like that, Phuong would not hesitate to fight back, but this time was different. Phuong remained silent, even sobbing, which infuriated Mrs. Thuan. She turned to defend her daughter-in-law, scolding the sisters-in-law. "You siblings are only good at shirking responsibility. Only when I was sick did I realize who truly cared. You 2 shut up. I've made my decision. Your father and I are entrusting the dying secret to Tung and his wife. Anyone who disagrees can leave." "Father, say something. Why aren't you passing the trade to the eldest son, but to the youngest? Our family has worked so hard for so many years. In just a short time, Mother has changed 180 degrees. I don't agree." Mr. Phuc slammed the table and roared, "If you don't agree, then don't. This family doesn't tolerate such insolence. You siblings have no right to argue, now leave." Tung's brothers and sisters stood up, preparing to leave, their hearts seething with resentment. The eldest brother, who had initially let his wife speak, now blurted out, "You're very clever, Tung, and your wife is good at scheming, but a thin screen cannot hide a saint's eyes. If this trade falls into your hands, it will soon fail. You fake." Mr. Phuc, hearing his son speak, was furious. He pointed directly at his son's face and disinherited him on the spot. Suddenly, a family that had been united for so long was torn apart, with siblings turning into enemies over this matter. Their parents had made their decision and would never change it. With success firmly in her grasp, Phuong pretended to be humble and said, "Father, mother, I beg you, because of this, my siblings have misunderstood my husband and me. Please, pass the trade to the eldest brother and his wife. I have no objections." A single word from Phuong rendered all the others' arguments worthless. Indeed, honey kills flies. Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuan believed they had placed their trust in the right place, and that Tung and Phuong were entirely worthy. The family meeting ended with the children's dissatisfaction. Perhaps in this matter, the children were right, but Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuan had no idea what their youngest daughter-in-law was truly like. A month later, after Phuong had fully grasped the core and secrets of the fabric dyeing technique, terrible things began to happen. Mrs. Thuan had been experiencing unexplained headaches for several days. Examinations showed no illness. Often, it was as if she was faking it. Mr. Phuc frequently suffered from stomachaches and bowel issues, and no matter what traditional or Western medicines he took, they provided no relief. When told, Tung would say his father probably had irritable bowel syndrome, causing indigestion. Only one person knew why the couple suffered these symptoms, even though that person was not a doctor. One morning, Phuong went to her birth parents' house. After rummaging through all the bottles of medicine Mr. Tryon usually took, she couldn't find what she wanted. She asked, "Father, do you have any expired medicine you're not using? Give it to me." "Why do you need expired medicine, child? I gave you a whole bunch the other day, didn't I?" "I need it for something, Father. Just give it to me." "It's in the cabinet drawer. Remember, don't take any expired medicine or you'll die. It's all past its use-by date." Phuong quickly gathered the medicine and left. She reminded her father, "I'm very busy these days. My husband and I are researching the secret to dyeing fabric. If we pass the trade on and our house isn't as good as Hoan and Tham's, I'll be furious, Father. I'm taking this to experiment with." "Oh, their house is famous for the most beautiful silk in the region. Their fabric colors are also beautiful. Where did you learn that you need to use expired medicine to create colors like that? This is the first time I've heard of it." Phuong softly shushed her father, indicating it was a secret, then quickly hopped onto her motorbike and left. Mr. Tryon found it strange, but didn't say anything more when his daughter said she was researching. She also told him to save any unused Western medicine for her, but not to tell anyone, not even Tung. Well, let her be, he thought, shrugging it off. But things were not entirely as his daughter had said. Day by day, Mr. Phuc and Mrs. Thuan grew more exhausted. Their skin turned pale and sallow, their limbs grew weak, their eyes blurred, and their heads throbbed with pain. Their diligent daughter-in-law, however, would buy medicine for her parents to drink whenever she heard of a good doctor or healer. Just before, she had even invited a traditional healer to check their pulses and prescribe a stack of medicines for them, which they had to drink every day. The healer claimed that if they persistently took his medicine, their illness would disappear. A few months later, Mrs. Thuan passed away, much to the astonishment of the villagers. They said she must have become weak all over because of her paralyzed leg. Before the children had finished mourning their mother, less than a month later, Mr. Phuc followed his wife to the ancestors. If only Mrs. Thuan had died, it would have been one thing. But Mr. Phuc was normally very healthy, so why did he also die within such a short time? Many people speculated that their family had been struck by a curse, and if they didn't invite a geomancer, their children would also be taken. Everyone was anxious and fearful, especially Tung and Thai, the eldest son and his wife, who were very superstitious. After burying his father, Tung intended to find a geomancer for a ritual. Only one person didn't believe in this story, Phuong. That night, Tung had a nightmare. Specifically, his father appeared to him in a dream to warn him. "Son, I died unjustly. Help me. Father, what happened to you? Who harmed you? Tell me." But before Mr. Phuc could say anything more, there was a sudden dog bark. Tung only managed to reach out and ask his father before he vanished like a wisp of smoke. That was the first and last time he saw his father, even in a dream. The next day, when Tung told his wife about it, she said, I have a strong suspicion. Phuong and some shady character might have conspired. How else could mother and father die so quickly? Besides inheriting the trade, who knows what else they received? Where did mother and father keep all their money and gold over the years? What his wife said made sense, and Dung nodded. How could I not have thought of that? I was so focused on the trade that I didn't ask where mother and father kept their money and gold all this time. That girl is truly cunning. She's a real snake. Thai only said that, but she didn't do anything. But Thao was different. A woman's suppressed anger is hard to bear. She told her second sister-in-law and her two sisters-in-law. All the sisters-in-law were furious and wanted to confront Tung and Phuong. Now that their parents were gone, there was nothing to hold them back. So, Phuong didn't hesitate to argue with her sisters-in-law. Tung also didn't mind, even saying harsh words to his own sisters. At their peak, Tung and Phuong even bluntly told Thai to leave their house, declaring their relationship severed. That night, as Tung slept soundly, Phuong thought to herself, "This can't go on. I need to get ahead of them. Tomorrow, I'll make a trip to Hoa Bin and take care of this immediately, or everything will fall apart." At the house of the shaman in Mai Chau, Hoa Bin, after Phuong slipped a wad of money into his hand and pleaded earnestly, the old shaman, tempted by the money, said, "I hear your story. This matter is difficult. It requires banishing two souls at once. This is extremely immoral and harmful to one's lifespan, so the price will not be cheap. I am risking my life to help you, so this amount of money is too little." With that, he cast a flickering gaze at the ring Phuong wore on her finger. As a cunning woman, Phuong understood immediately. She slowly removed the ring and placed it on the table. "Please, master, help me. I offer this to you. I only ask you to find a way to banish these two souls so they cannot escape as ghosts to haunt my family. Just tell me how, and I will do it myself. You don't need to be present there. I'm forever grateful." "You don't understand why I cannot perform the ritual at that location. This timing is very dangerous, and it requires extremely precise manipulation. I will guide you carefully. Can you do it?" "Yes, I can. Please guide me, master. I believe I can do it. I also wish to invite you, master, but if you appear, it might expose everything." "Very well then. Now write down their full names, dates of birth, and dates of death here for me." Phuong quickly did as he asked, noting it on a piece of paper, then went into the room. A moment later, he emerged holding two cloth effigies, sat down, and took out two red talismans, drawing special characters on them that Phuong couldn't decipher. He then inserted a talisman into each effigy and sewed them shut. Next, he used a needle to thread a red string, tightly sewing the mouths of the two effigies closed, leaving 5 multicolored threads hanging out. At the same time, he took 3 needles from his professional bag and stabbed them consecutively into the head, neck, and chest of the male effigy, leaving them there, and did the same thing with the female effigy. Finished, he handed them to Phuong and instructed her to carefully keep these 2 effigies. Then, at midnight, she was to dig 2 graves and bury these 2 effigies in them. Absolutely no one must find out. I have used the soul binding technique on these 2 people into these effigies. As long as they are buried in the 2 graves, they will never be able to find peace, for these 2 effigies will guard them with evil intent. If they try to escape, these 2 effigies will immediately shatter their souls. Remember that. Exultant that her scheme was about to succeed, Phuong nodded, put the 2 effigies in her bag, and bid the shaman farewell. On her way home, Phuong began to devise a plan to bury the 2 effigies in her in-laws' graves easily. As someone known to be terrified of ghosts, being told to go to the cemetery alone at night, she would surely die of fear before accomplishing anything. Phuong suddenly gasped, thinking of her own parents. Yes, only my parents can help with this. Mr. Tryon loved his daughter dearly, so he always listened to her. As soon as her car stopped outside their house, she didn't go home directly but circled to her parents' house. Fortunately, Mr. Tryon was home alone at this moment, no one else around. Phuong immediately sat down beside him and whispered her plan to her father. At first, hearing his daughter's words, Mr. Tryon was startled, not understanding what she was trying to do. Moreover, meddling with the spirits of the deceased was considered taboo. He started to tremble, saying, "Do you want to die, child? Who incited you to do such an immoral thing? Remember, those are your in-laws. Be careful, or you'll be strangled to death. Why are you so foolish?" "Father, do you think my husband and I inherited the trade naturally? I had to work hard, even resort to a bitter scheme to achieve this. That's why I can't let them find out what I've done. Yesterday, my eldest brother intended to invite a shaman to summon mother and father's souls and break the curse, Father. If they invite a shaman, I'm afraid my plan will be ruined. They'll kill me, Father. Hearing Phuong's words, Mr. Tien no longer had any doubts. He trembled all over, realizing his own daughter had committed such a heinous crime. Just thinking about it, he dared not imagine further. All this time, his daughter Phuong had been secretly poisoning her in-laws to death, which was why they were now haunting her and seeking revenge. And the truth was revealed as soon as Thai began to speak of performing a ritual to banish the spirits. He called out to Phuong. So, those times you came asking for expired medicine from me, it was for this, wasn't it? This is so immoral, child. When she heard her father complain like that, feeling his heart ache, Phuong immediately said, "If you won't help me, then don't. If they find out and I go to jail, will you just sit there and let it happen? It's not that hard. Tonight, you just need to go to the cemetery with me. I'll handle everything else. It's just that I'm scared of ghosts, so I need your help, Father." Indeed, children are like burdens. Mr. Tien, once again, helped his daughter do things that he shouldn't have done. As agreed with her father, at midnight, after her husband had fallen asleep, Phuong quietly got up and went outside. Mr. Tien was already waiting at the gate, and the two of them rode their motorbike to the cemetery about a kilometer away. On the deserted road, there was a skinny dog that barked loudly wherever they went. The wind howled, making the atmosphere even more chilling and eerie. The village cemetery had no caretaker. Anyone could come and go as they pleased. They called it a cemetery, but in reality, it was just a desolate field where villagers had buried their dead for years. As they approached the graves of her in-laws, Mr. Tien trembled even more. His body shook uncontrollably, and the cold winter air bit into his flesh, making his teeth chatter. Occasionally, a stray cat would let out a piercing cry, echoing through the silence. This desolate place was home only to these cats. Phuong seemed terrified, but her main task overshadowed the fear within her. She told herself, "Just a little longer, and everything will be as I wish. No one will ever find out about what I've done." Standing before the two graves, Mr. Tien took out a trowel and handed it to Phuong. Understanding, she told him to shine the flashlight down, and she personally dug up handfuls of earth from the graves. When she had dug about 2 handspans deep, making a fairly wide hole, Phuong began to place the marked effigies inside. In the beam of the flashlight, the effigies suddenly gleamed with an eerie light. Around their necks was a 5-colored cord, already tied there. 3 needles remained firmly embedded in their positions. Phuong buried the effigy in her father-in-law's grave and covered it with earth. From the grave, a faint, mournful cry seemed to emanate. Then, everything became silent as before. She did the exact same thing for her mother-in-law's grave. Standing beside her, Mr. Tien trembled, seeing his daughter show no fear in doing this. When the last handful of earth was covered, a flash of lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the faces of the 2 cold-blooded killers. In the dead of night, a mournful wail emanated from Mrs. Thuen's grave. Mr. Tien thought he had misheard and stammered, "Did you hear anything, daughter? It sounds like crying." In contrast to Mr. Trien's frightened face, Phuong showed no fear, only immense satisfaction. Her face glowed in the night, her sharp, cold eyes gleaming with a murderous look. Phuong then calmly said, "It's done, Father. Now everything is buried. No matter how skilled the shamans they invite, mother and father won't be able to return. These 2 effigies have imprisoned their souls forever in the grave. Their mouths have also been sewn shut, so how can they speak?" Phuong was truly cunning. After covering the graves, she cleverly pulled weeds over them, making it difficult for anyone to discover. With the occasional winter drizzles, the weeds would soon take root and grow. And the villagers of the Silk Village were busy year-round, only visiting the graves of their relatives on holidays, so she wasn't worried about being discovered. In just an hour, Phuong was safely back in bed next to her sleeping husband, who had no idea of the terrible crimes that had just been committed against his parents, and that the person lying next to him was a cold-blooded murderer, a human-shaped demon. Just as Phuong had calculated, a few days later, Hoan and his second brother invited a shaman to summon their parents' souls back home and perform a ritual to break the curse. When the altar was set up, the shaman began to chant and bow. After finishing his incantations, he clasped his hands and mumbled for a while, then suddenly his face furrowed, and he told the family, "I apologize, but I cannot sense the souls of your parents here. Perhaps they cannot return." Normally, within 49 days of death, their spirits should still linger around the house. After 49 days, they would descend to the underworld to listen to the judgment. "That's strange," Tung's siblings said, very surprised. They bowed to the shaman, hoping he would use his powers to summon their parents' souls to see if there was any injustice. But the shaman could only shake his head and refuse, saying he had tried everything but could not summon their spirits. Therefore, that day's ritual was only half successful. The shaman only managed to smoothly perform the ritual to break the curse. As for summoning the souls, it was a failure. Tung's siblings looked at each other, deeply disappointed. Only Phuong smiled inwardly. She felt truly clever for having acted a step ahead of them. If she hadn't done this, her crimes might have been exposed today, and she would have been in danger. She realized that planning ahead was always better than waiting until the last minute. Otherwise, one might die without knowing how. 3 years later, Hoan and Tham had a son, now over 2 years old. Having passed on all the trade secrets to their son, Mr. and Mrs. Han retired to care for their grandchild. Their family's silk remained the most famous in the region. Customers flocked to their home to buy it. Many families in the village wove silk, but none could produce the special silk of Hoan and Tham's family. They were meticulous from the silkworm rearing and cocoon selection to the weaving process. The silk weavers were always as busy as ants. Tham was no different. She closely monitored every batch of silk, from the raw material to the finished product. The most crucial step in creating beautiful fabric was the dyeing process. This alone determined their success and built their brand. Therefore, every silk weaving family had its own unique secrets to create its distinct quality. They kept their secrets so well that only the owners of the shop held the key. Their children also didn't know, unless they were taught the trade. Mr. and Mrs. Han's family was no different. In the past, before passing the trade to Tham and Hoan, Mrs. Han alone handled the dyeing. When she was too busy, she would oversee others. Now, Tham and Hoan had taken on that responsibility. Speaking of Tung Cheng, he still associated with Hoan even after getting married. But now that Hoan had a family and was dedicated to his trade, he had less time to socialize as before. Still, they remained very close. Hoan treated his friend well and harbored no suspicions, but Tung was different. He secretly nurtured jealousy towards Hoan because, by comparison, Hoan was a step above him. Hoan's family economy was also thriving. Most infuriatingly, whenever he saw Tham's slender waist, Tung felt bitter and thought Tham should have been his. Many times, he could only regretfully gaze at Tham from afar, yearning and desiring her. One day, by some twist of fate, Tham went to Tung's house and saw him come out. Tham asked, "Tung, have you seen my husband, Hoan? A customer is asking for him and I can't find him anywhere." This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. His wife wasn't home either. A dark thought crept into Tung's heart. He forced a smile. "Come in, Tham, come in, my dear." Tham, thinking Tung had some genuine business, entered the house. Tung pretended to examine a piece of silk, then asked Tham, "My wife Phuong was planning to ask you something, but she hasn't had a chance to come over yet. Come in." Hearing Tung, Tham assumed it was a domestic matter and temporarily forgot about finding her husband. The moment she stepped into Tung's house, he immediately locked the door and grinned lewdly. "Tham, I love you. I've had feelings for you for a long time, but Hoan snatched you from me. Come here, let me hold you for a bit." Without waiting for Tham to object, Tung lunged forward and embraced her tightly. Tham then realized she had been tricked. She pushed Tung away and rushed towards the door. But a woman's slender strength was no match for the depraved demon that had awakened within Tung. "Tung, what are you doing? Aren't you afraid Hoan will kill you?" "It's not that easy, my dear. Today is my lucky day. That devil wife of mine isn't home either." Tham raised her hand and slapped Tung hard across the face, screaming, "You beast! I never thought you'd be so vile to lay hands on your best friend's wife. My husband trusted and cherished you. It's all wasted." But despite Tham's curses and struggles, Tung was like a moth drawn to a flame, relentlessly assaulting her. Tham bit Tung hard on the shoulder when he bent down to kiss her cheek. It seemed Tung's blissful dream had its limits. After being resisted by Tham and having endured her curses, he lost all sense of consciousness. His hands began to strike her face. As he hit her, he cursed, "You bitch! You think you're so great, don't you? You're ungrateful. You refuse to drink the toast to joy, so you must drink the toast to punishment." Today, if I don't have my way with you, I'm not a man. As Tung was committing this brutal act against Tham, Phuong returned home and found the door locked. She called out loudly. Tham heard Phuong and screamed for help. Help me, Phuong, you didn't miss here, did you? That's Tham's voice, but why is she in our house? Tung quickly forced a smile and replied, Don't let me have to break the door down. If I get angry, both of you will face my wrath. Knowing Phuong's temperament, Tung abandoned Tham on the bed, quickly pulled on his clothes, and went to the door. At that moment, Tham also frantically gathered her torn clothes and fled. Seeing her husband's disheveled state, Phuong immediately guessed what had happened. She locked the door and stood in front of it. At this moment, Phuong's true viciousness erupted. She gritted her teeth, snarling, So, when I'm not home, you two dare to sneak into my bed and act like mice. No, it's not me. It's him, he forced himself on me, he's a scoundrel. Immediately, Phuong lunged at Tham and slapped her twice across the face as if lightning had struck. 10 fingerprints appeared on Tham's cheek. Tung, seeing the opportunity, twisted the narrative. You see, my dear, it was her. She provoked me when you weren't home. This woman, how could she be as beautiful as my wife? A wicked thought suddenly flashed in Phuong's mind. She smirked, You dared to provoke my husband, no matter whose fault it is. Now that you've entered my house, you won't escape easily. She peeked outside, saw no one, then gestured to Tung. Take her down to the dining room. I want to show her a fun game. Tung, hearing his wife's words, readily agreed. He knew that if he didn't obey Phuong now, the whole village would see his true face. Phuong then ordered Tung, Tie her up tightly, husband. You wicked woman, what are you planning to do to me? Let me go. Stuff a rag in her mouth. From now on, she's not allowed to speak. Tung meekly followed his wife's orders, and the two of them dragged Tham down to the dining room, which was also their workshop. Only Tung and Phuong were allowed to enter there. The workers were confined to the factory side. At this moment, the two beasts truly revealed themselves. Looking at the wall, Phuong took down a cruel whip, her jealousy burning intensely. She told her husband, Hang her up on the ceiling beam, husband, so she can't look down on anyone anymore. Tung leaned close to his wife's ear and whispered something unknown, at which Phuong nodded, seemingly satisfied. Immediately, Tham was tightly bound and hung from the crossbeam on the dining room's ceiling. Now began Phuong's truly monstrous torture. It is said that a woman's jealousy is terrifying. Tham's body was taut, covered in purple welts from the whips. It had to be admitted that Tham was very beautiful. Next to Tham, Phuong looked dim like an oil lamp beside a bright full moon. All this time, Phuong had been using a rattan whip, striking Tham's flesh, each lash leaving a stinging pain. Because her mouth was gagged, Tham could not scream, only glare with hatred at the two brutal tormentors. Suddenly, Phuong told her husband, Take her down, husband. I want to discuss something with her. When Tham was lowered to the ground, Phuong pulled the rag from Tham's mouth and slowly said, What good is beauty? Let's see if beauty can save you now. There's only one way. If you want to live, tell me quickly the secret to your family's fabric dyeing. Tell me, and I'll spare you. Otherwise, right now, I'll parade you through the village for everyone to see. What kind of woman dares to seduce another man's husband? Speak up if you want to live. You two are truly despicable. You're trying to use such a vile trick to steal my family's ancestral secret? I'd rather die than let you two achieve that, you fiends. Having said that, she spat directly into Phuong's face. Phuong seethed with rage because Tham had hit a nerve. She clenched her fists and began to relentlessly punch Tham's face. Blood started to flow from Tham's mouth and nose, but she defiantly endured, not begging or pleading. That despicable pair, first the wife, then the husband, continuously assaulted Tham, hoping she would fear the pain and reveal the secret. But Tham was truly resolute. She was determined not to reveal her in-law's ancestral secret, even if it cost her life. Then a voice echoed in Phuong's ear, Kill her, cut her open, take her blood, and mix it with the ingredients. It will create a truly unique color. That is the true ancestral secret. Phuong leaned close to Tung's ear and whispered. Tung's eyes immediately lit up. He now acted no differently than his wife's obedient automaton. Tung retrieved a sharp knife, the kind usually used for butchering pigs. He walked towards Tham. Seeing Tung holding the knife menacingly, Tham immediately knew what they intended to do to her. She screamed, You two are devils. I accept death willingly. You two will never have children to carry on your lineage. Your children will be crippled and deformed, bearing the rotten souls of their parents. I hate you, you cruel murderers. Do you know what we plan to do? We will use your blood to create a unique color, one of a kind. We will destroy your family's monopoly. You'll see, the silk woven with your blood will be sold at exorbitant prices. I've found the formula. So, the two devils intended to use her blood to dye fabric. In a final, desperate struggle between life and death, Tham used all her might to escape, but all her efforts were in vain. With her hands and feet tied, Tham now looked no different from a condemned prisoner about to be executed. Phuong signaled her husband. Tung, understanding, brought the knife down, striking Tham hard on the neck. Immediately, blood spurted from her neck. At this moment, in her eyes, they were truly two terrifying butchers. Blood flowed from Tham's neck and was caught by Phuong in a basin. In just a moment, when the blood stopped flowing, Tham also took her last breath, her eyes still wide with hatred. Tham was dead. The devilish couple showed no fear or panic. Instead, they focused on a very large pot they had set up. This was the pot Phuong used to boil the dyeing solution, but the stove was still cold and unlit. Normally, before dyeing, Phuong would boil the dyeing solution in this pot, but today was different. She simply poured the dyeing solution into water at a predetermined ratio. And so, using the blood taken from Tham's body, they began to put the silk in. While waiting for the silk to soak up the dye, the cold-blooded woman turned to her husband and said, "We can't leave her body here. Go ahead and dismember her. We'll dispose of her when it gets dark. From now on, the cellar door must be locked tight. No one is allowed in here." Tung merely nodded in agreement with his wife and began to use the knife to chop Tham's body into many pieces. At 7 p.m. at Tham's house, Hoan was frantically searching for his wife, wondering where she had gone all day and hadn't returned. He had stopped by Tham's parents' house, and they said she had dropped by briefly that morning and left right away. Their son, Hoan, kept calling for his mother and crying, making everyone constantly try to soothe him until he finally quieted down. They were worried that something bad had happened. Tham had never been gone this long before. And if she did go somewhere, she always told her husband. So where was she? A vague premonition made Hoan anxious and restless. No matter how much he and his family searched everywhere, Tham was nowhere to be found. And no one else had seen Tham either. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Their son was given some sleeping medicine, leaving Hoan alone and unable to sit still. In those days, search methods were still rudimentary, so the police force was not the first place people thought to go. Close to 10 p.m., Hoan, still alone, frantically rode his motorbike everywhere looking for his wife. After a while of searching, he returned home disappointed. Passing by Tung's house, he saw the lights were still on. Hoan remembered he hadn't asked Tung yet. He stopped his motorbike and called inside. "Tung, I need to ask you something. Where have you been, my friend? Have you seen my wife, Tham? I don't know where she's gone. She hasn't been home all day. I'm so worried." "Oh, really? Tham, she hasn't come over to our house all day. She hasn't come back yet." Tung spoke so blandly that Hoan's last hope faded. Hoan drove home, disappointed. Behind him, the murderous couple's eyes, sharp as knives, watched Hoan as they slowly closed the door, waiting for nightfall. When everyone else had sunk into sleep after a tiring day's work, the lights in Tung's house were still on. The two cold-blooded killers were preparing to dispose of the unfortunate woman's body. Initially, they intended to take Tham's body and dump it in the river, but now they feared someone might see them, so their plan changed. It was still Phuong, with her scheming mind, who told Tung, "Our garden is big, isn't it? Just bury her body at the bottom there and we'll be safe. No one will come here to dig, and there's no reason for anyone to enter." "Are you crazy? What if her ghost comes back to haunt our garden? No, let's find another place. It's too creepy." "You're so timid. How can you accomplish anything significant? Didn't they say the most dangerous place is the safest? No more arguments, go dig a hole in the corner of the garden, quickly. Because you caused this crime, I, a woman, have to clean up the mess." Tung, hearing Phuong claiming his crime, had no further objections. He immediately grabbed the shovel and went to the dense bushes in the corner of the garden to start digging. It was midnight, so he could only dig for a while before he felt hot all over. Yet, he still struggled for an hour, plus the help of the wicked woman, before finally finishing the task of burying Tham's dismembered body. To disguise it, they couldn't just leave it as a grave. Phuong ordered Tung to plant a banana tree over it. She even added, "Planting this will ensure not even a saint will discover it." After disposing of all the heinous evidence, the evil couple embraced each other and slept soundly, without a hint of remorse for their immoral actions. It was truly regrettable for Hoan, who, trusting in fate, lost his wife. Now he was left in the situation of being a single father raising his son. After many days of fruitless searching, Tham's parents were heartbroken. They cried endlessly, grieving for their daughter. Villagers whispered, each with their own speculation about Tham. Out of nowhere, rumors spread that Tham had been kidnapped and sold to China. In those days, there was a problem with women being kidnapped and sold across the border to Chinese men who couldn't find local wives. The story spread more and more, yet no one suspected that Tham had been murdered in the village. Because if she had been murdered, a body would have been found. How could a girl who disappeared so suddenly be sold to China? Mr. and Mrs. Han were both heartbroken for their son and for their young grandson, who had lost his mother at such a tender age. Mrs. Han didn't blame Tham. She only regretted that such a virtuous and capable daughter-in-law had fallen into the hands of evil. Hoan began to inquire among his acquaintances if there was any way to go to China to find his wife. He also believed she had been sold there and held on to the hope of one day finding his wife. Today, their house was very joyful because the silk fabric that Tung and his wife had dyed with Tham's blood sold out completely. When customers held the fabric in their hands, they praised its beautiful color, some even saying they would have a new dress made. They had no idea that the silk had been imbued with a woman's blood, and that the people they thought were the shop owners were actually two cold-blooded murderers. Their joy doubled when Phuong discovered she was pregnant. After many days of hoping, Tung and Phuong were finally going to have a new family member. Phuong was 3 months pregnant. Normally, Phuong was very healthy, but during her pregnancy, she experienced extreme morning sickness. She became thin as a stick, and her skin was pale. Yet, it seemed the fetus was developing normally, as she could feel its growth day by day. Her stomach grew larger by the day. Occasionally, she even felt the baby kicking and moving vigorously. Doctors said the fetus was very healthy. In those days, ultrasound was not yet common. Wealthy families would seek out skilled traditional healers to check pulses. Tung also took Phuong to a traditional healer's house in Thuong Tin district. After checking her pulse, the healer looked at Phuong's eyes and told her she was anemic and weak. He gave her a few packets of medicine, then said, "The baby in your womb is a girl. However, I find it a bit strange that the baby's pulse is not normal, but perhaps my perception is wrong, as you and your husband have traveled a long distance to get here, haven't you?" He reminded her that even though she had medicine to take, she should still take it carefully. "Well, go home now." When Tung and Phuong left, the healer suddenly blinked several times because he had just seen a wisp of white smoke envelop Phuong and then quickly disappear. Earlier, when he held her hand to check her pulse, he felt a wave of icy coldness pass through his hand. He had never encountered such a case. Her pulse was also unclear, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, very peculiar. A vague, ominous feeling washed over him when he looked at this woman. The healer mumbled, "I have a feeling something is clinging to her." A few months later, Phuong gave birth to a baby girl weighing nearly 4 kilograms. The couple was overjoyed. Mr. Tien came to visit his daughter and saw that the newborn baby girl's eyes were wide open, which startled him slightly. Normally, newborns sleep constantly and rarely open their eyes, but this child was different. Not only that, but she cried incessantly day and night. Each time she cried, she would not stop. And when she cried, her eyes would turn red like 2 drops of blood. Looking into her eyes, Mr. Tien felt a sense of uneasy anxiety. That night at Hoan's house, his son was sleeping soundly, but the little boy, Hoan, kept looking out the gate. "Mother, don't go, come inside with me, mother, I miss you so much." The boy's voice startled Hoan awake. He thought his son was dreaming. He patted his son's bottom to calm him, but the boy turned to his father and pointed outside, babbling, "Mother's home, father. Mother is standing outside the gate." Hoan looked out the door but saw no one. Thinking his son had played too much during the day and was talking in his sleep at night, he gently told him, "Dream well, son. When mother comes home, she'll buy you many presents." "No, mother can't come home, father. I see mother's body is covered in blood. Mother said she's dead. I'm looking for mother, so please let me go." The child's words startled Hoan. Why would his son say such frightening things? People often say that children have a sixth sense, and perhaps his son had seen her. Because of an invisible connection, a psychic bond, he dared not think further. He still clung to hope that his wife was alive and would return, so for the next few nights, little Hoan continued to dream of his mother, seeing her in a garden of trees. But the child's young mind couldn't express it well, so he told the story in a jumbled way, making Hoan both worried and frightened. A vague premonition began to creep into his mind. Although he had never dreamed of his wife, what his son said made him unable to doubt it. Where is she now? Has my beloved wife truly left this world? Distressed and heartbroken for his wife, he prayed that his fears were not true. A month later, in a house on Tao Tin Street, a girl was excitedly trying on a long red dress. This was the dress she had made from the silk fabric she had bought earlier. Today, she wanted to wear this dress to a friend's birthday party. Coming from a well-off family, she had always socialized with the wealthy crowd. Her parents had only 2 children, and she was the youngest, so she was pampered. After bathing, Thao put on the dress and admired herself in the mirror. It was a beautiful dress, hugging Thao's body, making her stand out like a princess. She smiled contentedly, turning left and right. Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her. "Girl, stop right there. Do you know what you're wearing?" Thao thought she had misheard, so she looked into the mirror. But she suddenly covered her mouth in shock when the mirror no longer showed her own delicate image, but a completely different body with a blood-splattered face. Thao rubbed her eyes and tried to calm down, but the image was gone. Thinking she was just tired and hallucinating from lack of sleep, Thao was no longer afraid. She dismissed the strange thoughts and decided to wear the dress to the party. At the party, Thao was like a dazzling flower, making the wealthy young men eagerly cling to her. The red dress was truly striking, making the birthday girl herself suddenly fade into the background. But that wasn't all. At this party, Thao was like a star. But this night was truly a terrifying night for her. At midnight, Thao found herself wandering in the red dress to a very strange place. Around her were many pieces of silk hanging to dry, looking very beautiful. Before she could understand what was happening, a voice, seemingly both far and near, spoke. "Do you recognize this place? If you see this place, this is the house of the evil couple. They killed me and used my blood to dye fabric." "Who is that who just spoke? Where am I?" "You are in Tien Chau Silk Village. Find this house, you will know the truth." "No, I don't know anything. Please don't come to me, I won't go there." "They killed me, girl. I died unjustly. They killed me." And among the drying fabrics, the image of a blood-covered girl appeared. When she lifted her face, Thao gasped in horror, realizing it was the same girl she had seen in the mirror earlier that evening. Why was she appearing and haunting her? Who was she, and why had she died? Could the truth be as she said? Thao woke up with a start, her eyes wide, still shaken by the strange dream. She looked out into the hallway, where the red dress still swayed gently in the breeze under the streetlights. "Oh my God, I remember taking it off last night and putting it in the laundry basket in the bathroom. The dress hasn't been washed yet, so who hung it up here?" Her heart pounded, and Thao knew the dream was completely real and the unjustly killed girl was appearing to her in a dream. She reached for the dress and instinctively brought it to her nose. A pungent, bloody smell hit her nostrils, yet the dress was dry and spotless. "What is this? How?" She turned on the light and meticulously examined the dress. It was completely normal, there was nothing strange about it. But why did a foul, fishy smell still emanate from the dress? It was the smell of blood. "What is this? How?" Thao quickly put the dress away in the closet, vowing never to wear it again. Still uneasy, Thao opened the closet again, sprayed perfume repeatedly on the dress, then tightly wrapped it in a plastic bag and stuffed it into the innermost compartment, locking it securely. Time flew by. 2 years had passed since Tham's disappearance. Little Hoan was now 4 years old and attending kindergarten. Many people advised Hoan to remarry so someone could help him raise his son, but he still harbored guilt. As for Tung's family, his daughter was also 2 years old, but for some reason she could speak but couldn't walk. Both her legs were weak, as if she were paralyzed. Every day, she would only crawl around the 4 corners of the house. The child couldn't walk, but she was very intelligent. Occasionally, when Phuong looked into her eyes, she felt terrified. From those eyes, cold lights occasionally shone, like the eyes of death itself. The couple was very sad. Although they had taken their daughter everywhere, from traditional healers to Western doctors, they only received disheartening shakes of the head. Tung and Phuong sadly gave up and hoped for their next child. But even though the couple used no birth control, Phuong couldn't conceive. Their business also showed no improvement, or rather, under the management of Tung and Phuong, the business declined. Although she had inherited the trade from her mother-in-law, The quality of the silk she produced was still inferior to Hoan's family and even to some other families. Tung was deeply frustrated. After so much effort, he still couldn't succeed like his parents. Why was their business failing and their children also troubled? Phuong returned, carrying her handbag. She sat down angrily and was about to mutter something filled with bitterness. When her husband came in, she said, "Let all the workers go. We're just feeding a bunch of burdens. We don't treat them badly, but they weave such terrible silk. Today, I went to present samples and those customers wouldn't take them anymore. They said they've all placed orders with Hoan's family. Isn't that infuriating?" Strange, isn't it? He only has one arm, but how can that guy still be developing so strongly? I thought cutting off his wife would be like cutting off his family's hand. Why didn't it work at all? In the corner of the house, little Ngan suddenly let out a giggle. She pointed at her parents and uttered a sentence that sent shivers down their spines. Mother and father are evil. Mother and father are murderers. Phuong, enraged, turned to her daughter. "It's all your fault, you monstrous freak. Why did I give birth to such an inhuman, ungrateful creature like you?" Little Ngan showed no fear. She spoke again. "You will pay the price. You are very evil. Even if you kill me, I will still haunt you." Is that her? How does she know?" Phuong stammered to Tung, her face pale, her hands and feet trembling. Tung sat beside her, stiff as a board. Suddenly, they both pointed at the little girl, taking a step back. It wasn't the innocent little Ngan they were looking at, but Tham. Yes, it was Tham. With a contorted, blood-covered face, her mouth gaping open to her ears, she let out an eerie, ghostly laugh. No one knew what evil force had happened. The murderous couple suddenly recalled all the heinous acts they had committed, which they had inadvertently forgotten. Tham's voice, in Ngan's form, resonated mournfully again. "You too will pay the price, you cold-blooded murderers. I hate you." All that day, they couldn't do anything for the household, as Tham's ghostly image constantly appeared before them. Oh no, Phuong was now afraid of her own child. That night, she didn't dare sleep with the little girl. Tung was the same. The couple moved little Ngan to the adjacent room and had her sleep alone. At this moment, they wished Mr. and Mrs. Phuc Thuyen were still alive. They would surely not hesitate to hand the little girl over to them. But that night was a horrifying nightmare for Phuong. Little Ngan didn't sleep. She crawled all over the house. Her eyes glowed in the darkness, red like two burning coals. Tung and Phuong hugged each other, sleeping. Tung thought moving little Ngan to the next room would ensure peace. But around 3 a.m., Phuong suddenly opened her eyes. She stared, disbelieving, as she saw the eerie figure still crawling on the floor in the dim light. She looked like a ghost at this moment. Suddenly, she looked up at her mother and grinned, a sinister, haunting smile coming from the realm of the dead. Her blood-red eyes stared intently at Phuong, filled with death. Phuong was terrified. She shook her husband's shoulder and screamed, wake up, it's not our child. It's a demon is here." But Tung remained fast asleep, as if dead, even as Phuong shook and called him until her throat was hoarse. On the floor, his daughter's mouth stretched wide, revealing a long, bloody tongue and two long, sharp fangs. "You are the killers, the beasts," Phuong fainted, knowing nothing more. It wasn't until a powerful slap on her body brought her back to consciousness. It was Tung. Waking up in the morning, he didn't see his wife. He stepped off the bed and was horrified to find his wife collapsed on the floor. In the next room, little Ngan was still sleeping soundly, but her little legs were still stretched out, as if she had just crawled somewhere. A ghostly aura enveloped the house. Phuong woke up after her husband's slap, still terrified. She stumbled around, looking for something, then asked, "Where is she? There's no one. Ngan is still sleeping soundly." Phuong didn't believe it and had to go check for herself. When she saw her daughter indeed sleeping soundly, she asked, "What do we do now? At this rate, I'll die. We have to go to the shaman for an exorcism. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid she'll kill our whole family." So, Phuong decided she had to go to the shaman in Hoa Bin. That very morning, leaving Tung to watch their daughter, Phuong took a bus. But this trip left her disappointed, for the shaman she had visited earlier had died a few days ago. When she arrived, people were preparing to bury him. Villagers said that night, 2 very large king cobras had entered his house and bitten him to death. His son, who was in the next room, heard his father groan and then saw 2 snakes slither out of his father's room and disappear into the bushes. A strange thing was that when they left, the 2 snakes left behind a strip of old black silk, the kind found only in Tien Chau Village. The shaman had no time to give any instructions, only saying one sentence to his son before he breathed his last. "I am being avenged." His son heard it but didn't understand. Before he could rush his father to the emergency room, the shaman's mouth foamed, and he twitched a few times, then died immediately. He died with his eyes still wide open, white like a snake's eyes. The son and his wife tried everything, but they couldn't close his eyes. They finally had to cover his face with a cloth. Thus, all of Phuong's hopes vanished. With the shaman dead, whom could she rely on? She had to sadly take a bus home, her heart filled with despair, for everything still lay ahead of her. Now, speaking of the girl in the city, she had bought the silk fabric from Tung Cheng's shop to make a dress. Since making the dress, almost every night she was haunted by the blood-stained red dress, which she had carefully put away and worn only once. But every night, the ghostly image of the woman appeared, flickering before her eyes. She constantly cried out for help. "Sister, I can't help you. I don't know where your house is. Tomorrow, wear this dress and go to Tien Chau Silk Village. Then it will lead you to my house. Tell my husband that someone killed me because my house has a bagua mirror hanging in front, so I can't enter to warn him. I pity you, but can you believe who killed me?" "I don't know who killed you." "They killed me and used my blood to dye fabric, then buried me under a banana tree in their house. My family is about to decline, and I cannot linger in the mortal world for too long." Just as she said this, the spirit suddenly vanished. At the same time, the sound of a cat meowing and a child crying made Thao scream. It was 4 a.m. Thao couldn't sleep anymore. She lay awake until morning, thinking about the words of the ghostly woman. It turned out she had been brutally murdered, and the dress Thao was wearing was dyed with a woman's blood. What kind of cruel person would do such a thing? The spirit of the woman now appeared, no longer frightening. She was a very beautiful and gentle woman. Looking at her face, Thao thought this person would never harm anyone. This morning, a special guest arrived at Hoan's house. It was the young woman. She didn't come to buy anything but wanted to meet him to tell him a story. Hoan looked at the girl and felt a mixture of familiarity and strangeness. It was as if he had seen her somewhere before. Coincidentally, little Hoan had the day off from school today, as it was International Labor Day. When the girl stepped into the house, wind chimes echoed. Although there was no wind outside, little Hoan, upon seeing the girl, cried out, "Mother, you're back. Why were you gone so long? I miss you so much." For him, the girl was not a stranger but his mother, Tham. He ran to her, hugging her legs, burying his head in her dress, making Thao feel both awkward and joyful. It turned out the red dress she was wearing was identical to Tham's dress. Hoan, embarrassed, gently pulled his son's hand away. "This is Thao, not your mother. Be good, son, and let father talk to her." The little boy then looked up, confused. The image of his mother had vanished, replaced by a strange girl. Hoan nodded and greeted her. "Please excuse him, he wants to go play." Hoan poured water and offered it to her, then said sadly, "Please understand, I lost my wife 2 years ago. He misses his mother, so he still expects her to return every day." Hearing him, Thao wanted to cry. She wanted to tell him the story, but also didn't. If she told him, she feared he would be sad and disappointed, but if she didn't, she would fail the spirit. Finally, Thao took a deep breath and began the story. Thao finished speaking, but Hoan remained silent for a while. His face was pale and heartbroken. 2 tears rolled down his cheeks. He didn't believe his wife was dead, but he couldn't disbelieve her words. Another surprising detail was that his wife couldn't enter the house to warn him in a dream because there was a bagua mirror and wind chimes on the door. He explained that when his wife was about to give birth, his mother had consulted a feng shui master. The master advised them to hang a bagua mirror in front of the house to ward off evil spirits. Evil spirits and wandering ghosts loved to tease children. He thought it made sense, so he hung it there. As for the wind chimes, he liked their beautiful appearance and the pleasant sounds they made. But he didn't know that wind chimes were also objects that attracted evil spirits. So his wife was murdered, and the culprit buried her body under a banana tree in their house. But who was the culprit? Thao sensed Hoan's confusion and said, "I think if you want to know about the dream, you need to remove these 2 items. Perhaps tonight you'll learn some secrets. I also hope you'll find her soon and expose the wicked person." Remembering something, he turned to Thao and asked, "You said you bought this dress from a shop here, didn't you? Whose house did you buy it from?" "I bought it from Tung Phuong's shop." Hearing that name, Hoan was completely shaken. Could it be them? He couldn't believe Tung, his own best friend, would harm Tham. but Thao insisted she was certain because the fabric had the shop owner's name on the label. Moreover, a horrifying detail was that Thao said the person who killed his wife had used her own blood to dye these fabrics. But why did so many people buy the fabric, yet only Thao sensed Tham's spirit? Thao also explained that she was a weak-spirited person, so she had often encountered ghosts since childhood. Perhaps because she was receptive, she could easily see spirits, and her presence at his house today was also guided by Tham. Tham had also instructed Thao to wear this very dress when she came. Perhaps that's why his son felt a warmth from his mother, and the sacred mother-child bond made the boy call Thao Mother when he saw her. After listening to Thao and removing the Bagua mirror and wind chimes, that night Hoan saw his wife. He was heartbroken to know that Thao's words were completely true. Tham was dead. The two people who brutally murdered her were the cold-blooded couple Tung and Phuong. All his hopes vanished into thin air. When he saw his gentle, loving wife, who had been brutally murdered by evil people just for their greed and Phuong's cunning, devilish nature, Tham's spirit appeared faint. Perhaps her greatest wish was to see her husband and son one last time before moving on to the other side. And most importantly, she wanted him to expose the culprit, to make them accountable for their inhumane actions. Only then could she rest in peace. A day later, at Tung and Phuong's house, under the watchful eyes of many people, the police unearthed a newly buried skeleton under a banana tree behind their house. It was heartbreaking to see the body brought up in fragmented pieces of bone. They were merely wrapped in a black plastic bag. Besides the bones, there was nothing else to suggest anything, proving that when the evil couple buried the victim's body, they had stripped her naked. The murderous couple was then taken away. People only felt pity for a crippled little girl who was still crawling around the house, incessantly uttering words that scared everyone. Killers will pay with their lives. Karma spares no one. The Silk Village whispered that Phuong, Tung's wife, had also confessed to the police that she had poisoned her in-laws to death years ago. She had also deliberately trapped the souls of the couple so they couldn't return to warn their children. However, the police only heard these rumors and never believed in the supernatural. But when Tung's siblings checked their parents' graves, they discovered the two effigies buried there. It was then that the true face of the human-shaped demon was revealed. Tung, even in death, could not have accepted that he had been living with a demon, and that he himself had become a demon when he laid hands on Tham. Facing all the crimes he had committed, Tung now only awaited the day of his execution. He escaped the death penalty, but he would spend decades in prison, enduring the contempt of others. Especially, the court of conscience was the true price he would have to pay for his sinful actions. At a newly built grave, before a portrait and the thick smoke of incense, people saw Hoan and his son bowing and praying. Beside them was a shaman with all the necessary offerings. Today, Hoan had invited the shaman to perform a requiem for his wife. He prayed that she could now smile in the afterlife and rest in eternal peace. The ceremony concluded as the paper effigy bearing Tham's name burned away. In the hazy white smoke, he saw his wife's shadow appear, gentle and full of love. Her arm rose, waving. Suddenly, little Hoan reached out. He smiled as he heard his mother's voice, which had just kissed his face. In the distance, Tham's fading image gradually dissolved into nothingness. A new future awaited the father and son. Hoan would live on without his wife, but he vowed to make up for his son's lack of a mother's love twofold. The Silk Village now presented a vibrant, colorful picture.